Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of the Loop City Podcast. We have a special episode today. Today, you're going to get to know us, hear some cool things about us, whatever anyone is willing to share. I have some cool stories lined up, as do the rest of the fellas. I should probably introduce myself. I'm Radremm. I usually don't host. You're probably expecting to hear Mike's voice, but today I'm taking over, and you might hear me hosting some more. We got a lot of feedback about this podcast. One of the main things was, are these guys all brothers? Like, how do they know each other? Like, who are these guys really? And since I've had the pleasure of knowing and meeting everyone in person, we thought it would be a great idea for me to host this episode. And so let's go ahead and get right into it. Our center is Pistol Pete Toll, reported live from Atlanta, Georgia. What's up, Pete?
Center with the body of a small forward.
So I say he's the center because he's actually the tallest person on the podcast. I met Pete in person about 2 years ago. Three years ago now.
Was it 3 years ago? No, it wasn't 3 years ago.
2019.
Was it really? Yeah, I guess it was.
It was.
Man.
So for those of you who don't know, we all had a podcast before by another name, and that's how we all met and how we all came together. And so I had a family reunion in Atlanta, and Pete and I we tend to stay on after everyone else leaves the podcast and just talk. And one day we just started talking about life for just hours and just telling each other about our upbringing and just interesting stories. And so when I found out my family reunion was going to be in Atlanta, I was like, there's no way I'm going all of this way and not getting at least an hour or two in with Pete. And we actually went to a pretty cool restaurant. We sat, we had opportunity to talk. And I'm somewhat tall myself, but when I saw Pete in person, I was like, wow, this dude's a giant. Like, I felt like short. He's 6'6". So, Pete, I got some questions.
What's up?
The first one is, so Pete also played basketball in high school. So, Pete, when did you fall in love with the game of basketball?
First fell in love bits and pieces when I was 5. So it was the 89-90 playoffs.
Okay.
And, my dad would put it on and he started to see that I was like, oh, what is that team? Like, who is that player? Asking a lot of questions. And already being down in Atlanta, obviously it's Hawks country. And at that point they had Dominique. They were a decent team, then competitive. And oddly enough, Moses Malone, who was a former Sixer, great. They got Moses Malone, right in that era, the 88 to 90 era, and so he obviously was known to me, and then I got to learn about Dominique and the Hawks, and then you got to the Mookie Blaylock era, all that stuff. But obviously, being from Philadelphia, everybody could see behind me all the Philly stuff. I was born
Allen Iverson.
I was born in Philadelphia, raised most of my life now in Georgia, but still have a lot of family in the Pennsylvania area, and still root for all the Philly teams because that's what I know best, and how they're better than all the Atlanta teams. I will give a shout out. The Braves won the World Series. Good for them. Golf platform. That's about all they get from me. But my favorite player when I was little, it was short-lived, but I watched Dražen Petrović shoot the ball. And I fell in love then. I was like, man, that dude could shoot the ball. And I was like, that's what I want to do when I grow up. So my dad wasn't the biggest, athletic guy, anything like that. But my brother, who was considerably older than me, but he loved sports and was a baseball guy. He's like, hey, I'll show you some things with basketball and things like that. So we would go out and play kind of in the neighborhood hoop, things like that. And then funny enough, a neighbor 2 doors over, his uncle was a basketball coach. And he was like, oh, who's this skinny little white kid out here? Like, what's he going to do? Like, so he was like, man, you need to get in there and bang. You're the tallest one out here. Get in there and bang, get some rebounds, get tough. And so I would play with the older kids and get knocked around and things like that. And I'm like, damn, I can't score for nothing. And so I kind of thought like, oh man, I love like Dražen Petrovic, like Reggie Miller, being able to shoot the ball. Like maybe I could step out and learn to shoot. Well, you kind of had to get stronger. Well, with my body type being super skinny, that wasn't going to happen. So you kind of just had to learn to be quicker with your shot, get your shot off, pretty quick. So I just started extending my range, just practice. Between that and video games, that's all I did, as a kid. And so that's kind of how I fell in love.
So you're a shooter mostly.
Yeah, shooter in high school. That's kind of what I was known for. That and they used to call me Stats because I knew every other kid, like every single player down to the bench players on the other team. I would know their stats, their tendencies, all that kind of stuff, and could help the coach scout the other teams a little bit better. For me, I was never the ball handler type, anything like that. It was basically come off screens. Had a great point guard. He was a McDonald's All-American honorable mention, Kendall Ruffin, who just basically was the setup guy for everybody. And that's how I was able to get shots off. Unfortunately, for me, injuries derailed any college hopes, anything like that. Did get a state title, contributed
so you won
well
a state
to
championship.
That. Yep.
Awesome.
Contributed well to that state title. We won by 2. Mitchell Baker hit a 3 at the buzzer at half court, so made it a little bit closer. But
oh my God.
Yeah, my claim to fame is the 2 threes at the end of the first quarter, and going into halftime, I hit 2 threes going into that. So contributed. The game before that, I didn't do anything. Thought I was going to be benched for the championship game, but came through, and that's that. So,
P, you have a really, excuse me, you have a really interesting story. I love that. That sounds like a movie. Like when I talk to you guys and y'all tell me things about your lives, I feel like I should just be jotting everything down and like trying to find Tyler Perry to like green light my script or something. One story you told me when we were chatting one night after a podcast that I thought was really interesting. I want you to share it. Excuse me. Tell us what happened that time you got a dunk in a game. What your coach said.
Well, which one? There was a couple different instances, but
the one you got in trouble.
Oh, basically, I think it's the one where is it the one where I missed?
No, the one you made and got benched for.
Oh yeah, so basically, like just trying to showboat and be cocky because I wasn't really that like ultra athletic, and just dunking. Coach didn't like that because it was basically like, all right, you're showing out because you finally think you have hops. Like, your ass can't jump. Like, you out there to shoot threes, not be athletic. We got guys that can do that. Like, stop showing out. It's funny because our coach actually was under the great I forgot his name for Wheeler High School. He was an assistant coach. And was well regarded. So he didn't play that showboat, like let's do this stuff. He was all about fundamentals. Like for me, it was, put in the time after practice on your handles because basically coming off the screen, you're not going to be able to, shoot every single time. You got to put the ball on the floor. And defensively, being the only white kid on the team, I was a foot slower than in speed than everybody else. So I wasn't as athletic. So my gift was shooting. And it's like if I wasn't out there hitting shots, it's kind of like what else can I do? So the chance I get to dunk, it's like, oh man, I'm going to do this, and get a highlight dunk. But it did not go well. I thought for sure. Well, I got cussed out. I'll say that. But beyond that, like I thought it was going to be, lots more repercussions there. But coach didn't play that. Many times getting my jersey grab punched in the chest, all that stuff. Nowadays, you get kids that get that it's abuse and the parents are coming up there and all that stuff. We used to get screamed at and punched in the chest, told to run till we were throwing up and all that kind of stuff that they wouldn't allow that these days. But
well, I mean, it sounds like it paid off. I mean, y'all won the state championship, so
yeah,
maybe
it worked out. Yeah.
So you did land the dunk, right?
Yes, barely.
Okay.
Great. I would say a rim grazer if you're talking in 2K terms.
Did the crowd erupt when you did that?
They were shocked, erupting in shock that the white kid actually got the dunk. Yeah, I would say that.
Even at 6'6".
Even at 6'6", but like for me, it was like everybody else is putting on like windmills and stuff like that, and like for me to get like a basic, um, a basic dunk was something because like nobody really expected it from me, and like I had not really ever done it either, so it was kind of
Oh
a
wow.
mix of that. Like because I wasn't the fast break guy. Like on a fast break, it's like all right, I'm running the wing, looking to get a jump shot,
Hmm.
not to get to get a dunk. That was all like Mike and the twins and all that stuff like on my team. So
Did you play against Dwight Howard?
no, Dwight was
Okay.
younger, and he played in a whole different area. He played at Southwest Christian. Funny enough, an elementary school classmate of mine was his teammate, and we're
Hmm.
still actually good friends
Hmm.
to this day and keep in touch. He was actually his teammate and said, yeah, he was as goofy in high school as he is now. So nothing really changed there. Um, I did play like as far as like prominent members, even though he was younger than me, he was playing everybody on the scene in AAU. The one year that I did play AAU, I had to guard Lou Williams on a switch
Oh
and
wow.
got crossed out of my shoes, and yeah, I fell. Um, so yeah, that was exciting, and it was not even one of his patented like unique crossovers. It was more like a basic crossover, which for me not being that great of a defender, it you know wasn't that good a defense to begin with. So, but he's a
So
cool dude.
it was pretty evident he was gonna go pro then, huh?
Yeah, I mean everybody in the area knew, like because South Gwinnett High School where he went was a good basketball school, good baseball school, and then it was pretty much like between that and going to the University of Georgia, and everybody knows like you can put a scholarship in the University of Georgia, but nobody's actually going to go.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was pretty evident at that point, and that was the last year, if I remember correctly, that was the last year they allowed high school players to go.
Wow.
So.
Pete, my next thing is this. I want to know, you're known as the movie guy
Mm-hmm.
and the TV show guy. Like you're a connoisseur. You own a lot of films. What birthed that love for movies in you?
I think for me, because both like my dad was a huge movie collector and got me into a bunch of different genres of movies. My brother as well, and they had varying tastes. So I got the taste of like action films,
Hmm.
drama, romantic comedies, like I mean you name it, like pretty much, um, and like anything as far as genre goes, nothing specific. Um, with as far as movies goes, like I would say my favorite movie of all time, and it's based on principle and just like kind of how the narrative of the movie went, is the Shawshank Redemption. I just love the concept of the movie, just love the meaning of it.
Hmm.
Um, Favorite actors, Tom Hanks, Denzel Washington, and then he's not so much of a big actor now, but he was when I was younger, John Cusack.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so those are some of my favorites there. But if I had to pick a genre, it'd be comedy would be first. Um, but TV show wise, I mean it just varies. Obviously, being white, like Beverly Hills 90210 was the show for all the white kids that
And the black
but
kids that wanted to move to California when they grew up.
yeah. I liked everything. I liked Fresh Prince of Bel Air. Like I liked all kind of genres. Like I didn't have a like, oh man, I got to stick to these, 2, 3 shows. Like I watched all kinds of stuff. Growing up to broaden my horizons. Same with music. I liked all various type of music. Not a big country guy, but as far as like, other types of music, definitely a wide variety there. So
Well, all right, Pistol Pete Toe. Thank you so much for sharing um, with us. But before I move on to the next member of the podcast, I want to ask you one last question. Which member of the podcast gave you the worst initial impression?
oh man. I don't think any of you guys gave me an initial impression. So I'll say just real quick, like, so Matt and Gonzo, we met through the hangout that Desire used to put on related to 2K. I think we hit it off pretty well, from the get go. And then Rad, you and Mike, like I met through Matt, and I think we all hit it off. Like we never had like a bad vibe of anything. I would say, at least from my end, like I never felt like, oh man, who are these dudes? Like everybody gelled pretty instantly and fit seamlessly. And I will give like Matt credit. His taste in movies and shows sometimes are questionable, but I think his
just say
his
they suck.
his choice of friends and just kind of who he's cool with, it seems to be pretty cool with me, because he hasn't had anybody that's suspect that I've seen. Obviously, you guys know him better from longer periods of time, but just who he's invited on the pods in the past and stuff like that seemed pretty cool to me. So,
well, I didn't say this, man. Well, actually, I do have one quick question for you.
Okay.
Is there any interesting fact something that we might not know about you? Like, you're missing a toe or anything? Like,
I'll say this. I can say it publicly now because I couldn't at the time because it's like kind of under contract. But I'm huge into video games, specifically basketball. I was doing some behind the scenes work for NBA 2K. Still tight with a couple members of 2K, and do a little bit of contract work now, but it's not very major for them. So that's kind of like my side hobby. And I just like being like just cool with everybody, like just have a good time, just relax, like talk hoops. That's what I think helps this group gel so well. We all have a passion for hoops. We all have a passion for entertainment. We all have a passion for video games, music, movies, and we all have differing opinions about it. But what's cool is we all don't like judge each other. We all could cut up and then see the other person's point of view. And there's been a few times where I'm like, oh man, that movie sucked. But then I'm like, all right, let me watch it again. I'm like, oh, it's all right, not too bad. And then there's a few times where I just got to stay on Matt so bad for like Man of Steel and Batman and some other choices that movies. But it's all good. Hey, it's good to have different opinions and things like that. But like I said, we all I think we all fit seamlessly. And our conversations, Rad, they've gone so long to where you've literally fallen asleep in the middle, and I'm like, all right, cool. That's how it's gonna be. I'm a talker, so all good. But I think no matter how much time goes by, I think we'll always be cool with each other and be able to pick things up like we never left.
That's very well said, Pete. I've enjoyed our friendship and the time that we spent building with each other. I have a special bond with everyone on this podcast. I love you, Pete. Thanks for sharing these things with us. And I love your kid too, man. I hope you teach him how to hoop, because I think
appreciate that. He's starting to show interest. He's
funny, man. He's entertainment.
Yeah, he's a character.
Thank you for sharing, Pete, and letting people, allowing people into your life a little bit more intimately than they would be. Moving along to our power forward, Mr. Gonzo Star, Mr. Loop City. He came up with the name Loop City, by the way, all the way from Chicago. What's up, Mr. Gonzo Star?
What's going on, man? How you doing?
Listen now, he too cool for school. What's going on, brother? That's that Chicago swag. So about 2 years ago now, I went to Chicago, and we were actually there with some friends. I was there with a childhood friend of mine, Josh. What up, Josh? We went there for All-Star Weekend, and while I was there, again, like how I was with Pete, I said, I'm not going to leave Chicago until I meet Gonzo Star in person. And we got a chance to hang out. We went to Giordano's. If you know, you know. Gonzo ate all this pizza by himself. I was looking at him like, this guy can eat. I'm joking. I ate a whole pizza, half of one by myself. He didn't eat any at all. But we got to really talk in person and hang out, and it was awesome. It was He's so funny, super outgoing, and like my relationship with Pete, I've had a lot of time to talk to him after the podcast, on the phone, a lot. We hear from each other regularly, and yeah, if you don't, here's your opportunity to get to know him. So one of the things we talk about a lot is food. So since you're a foodie and I'm a foodie, I want to know what's your favorite place to eat in Chicago? Because Chicago is just full of amazing food options.
Man, it's a few places. I got two. I'm gonna give you two off the top of my head. The first place, I love Pepe's Tacos. I love Pepe's hard shell tacos. Yes, I like Pepe's Tacos. And a place that's not too far from where I stay, there's another taco place called On the Hill. It's a place in this Mexican community, and it's set up like a little small grocery store, but in the back of it has like this restaurant, and I mean they have some of the best steak tacos you ever want to taste. And I like this place called Beggar's Pizza. They have some of the best pizza. And Lou Malnati's. I'm a taco and pizza type of guy, so I kind of got a few pizza places that I like to eat at.
I'm kind of shocked because I thought you would say Portillo's.
Portillo's only for Italian beef. Like you're not gonna get Italian beef. I'm not eating at Portillo's. I'm not gonna eat a hot dog from there. I'll probably get a hot dog from Maxwell Street before I will.
I love the hot dogs at Portillo's. I think
Portillo's Italian beefs. They have the best Italian beefs I've ever tasted.
The first time I ever saw an Italian beef, Mike brought one from Chicago. He went to visit Chicago and he came back to Houston and he had one. He was putting the mic up like, bro, what is this? He was like, bro. And he didn't offer me any, but he was just like, yo. I was like, okay. So when you're in Chicago, try Portillo's Italian beef. You won't be disappointed. It's amazing. No disrespect, Pete. I know how you are about your Philly cheesesteaks, but Italian beef is something to have. So
it's good. It's good.
So I find it really interesting that you told me one time what your favorite sport was, and it kind of blew me away. Can you shed some light on that? Like, what's your favorite sport? Can you tell those that don't know?
My number one favorite sport is hockey. I played hockey. I played ice hockey when I was about 14 and a half. First I started off playing rollerblade hockey when I was like coming out of 8th grade. I played that for like I played that over the course of a summer. I played it from July to about September. And then I ended up joining. So it was like 13 going to 14. And then the winter league where I was staying at, which is in Chicago, by the University of Chicago, they had an ice hockey rink in this midway. And they had like a 18 ice hockey thing. I played ice hockey. I was a right winger. We played 16 games. And luckily I was kind of natural at it because I scored 16 goals. So I felt kind of good. I'm like, wow. I was like, I'm like one of the only black dudes that was there, and I actually scored 16 goals. And I was pretty good, man. I loved hockey. But then we moved to like the suburbs of Chicago. A lot of black schools don't have hockey. And I was like, why a lot of black high schools don't have hockey? It's not that black people can't play hockey. And the real reason is that hockey is so expensive. Like hockey is much more expensive than basketball and baseball. What you pay for shoulder pads, skates, hockey sticks, gloves, helmet, the amount of money you pay for uniforms, you could be paying up into $2,000s of dollars. I mean, just for equipment alone. So, like in the suburbs, the only place that really plays hockey is like Homewood Flossmoor High School. They have a ice hockey team. They have an ice hockey arena. So hockey is very expensive.
Wow. So you could have possibly been like the Tiger Woods of hockey.
No, I ain't gonna say all that. I was just good at that level. I'm quite sure I probably wouldn't have been as good going up into the higher levels. Possibly. I wouldn't bet on that though.
Because I always figured like black people didn't play hockey because they were afraid the ice was gonna melt and they can't swim, so I don't know. But I'm just saying.
He must have saw Mighty Ducks too and got inspired.
So another interesting thing about you is that you love video games too.
Love
like big time. Like I remember when we were establishing our friendship, you were saying something along the lines of reserving all your games at GameStop. So,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
you know, and usually when I'm talking to you, you're playing the game. So,
Yeah.
so what? How did you get? How did you become a gamer? And what's your favorite system?
Well, my favorite system currently now, I think the best system is probably the PS5
Okay.
because such as in console. What got me into games? My little brother's father kind of got me off into video gaming. He's the one who kind of got me off into sports as well. I was probably like 7, 8 years old at the time. He kind of got me to watching the Lakers versus the Pistons final, and I
Mm-hmm.
fell in love with the Pistons. And I would go to people's house and I would root for the Pistons, and people would throw me out of the house because they were Bull fans. They say, "Hey, you got to go.
Mm-hmm.
You're rooting for Isaiah Thomas in my house. You got to leave." So I had to walk all the way home where everybody else was having fun.
Oh
So I made it a
wow.
point to root for Isaiah Thomas, and I hated Michael Jordan in the beginning. And then when I finally
Wow.
started to see him get over the hump of beating the Pistons, and I started paying attention to him closely because I started off watching Isaiah Thomas very closely. And I was like, man, I want to play like that. And then I saw Michael Jordan. I started watching Michael Jordan. I said, wow, this dude's better. Like, man, he's like the truth. Nobody can stop him no matter what they do. They can double team him, triple team him, knock him to the ground. He keeps coming back like he got like 9 lives. So I said, man, no, this dude's the GOAT. And then I became a Bulls fan. And then I kind of say, like, Michael Jordan's kind of cocky. I said, I'm not going to like Michael Jordan. It's going to like Scottie Pippen. Then I saw like how Scottie Pippen used to cry all the time, like when the Pistons was beating him up. I said, no, he's weak. I said, no, I'm going with Mike. So I started liking Mike. I just fell in love with Mike from there, man. Like, and then, like I said, video games. The first video game I ever really fell in love with was probably like right after the Bulls won the championship. Maybe a little bit before that was Lakers versus Celtics.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Larry Bird would do the corner spin, turnaround three. Magic Johnson would come in and do the scoop layup. Michael Jordan would do the reverse layup under the basket. Who else? Charles Barkley would do the gorilla dunk. Tom Chambers would do the double pump from the 3-point line. Like, that was like my first sports game I really loved. Oh, and RBI baseball. No, not RBI baseball. It was called Bases Loaded on Nintendo. Those are the two
I remember
biggest
that game.
games that I played. That I really fell in love with in the beginning. So yeah, that kind of got me off into sports, and I've been like a sports fanatic. Like every year, I'm getting the the basketball game for whatever system I had, football, baseball, hockey, all of them. Like I kind of got them like every year. It's just something that it's like a tradition for me,
Well, I haven't beat you in 2K at all this year. I think I beat you last year and the year
You did.
before.
You beat me last
When
year
I
and the year before
first
that.
got the game, when Coach Matt got me playing the game again, I could not beat you at all. I couldn't beat you. I don't think I could beat Pete. Um, I was more so of a NBA Live guy, and so 2K is an adjustment for me. You have been very, I wouldn't even say critical. You've given some pretty objective takes on the game, NBA 2K and NBA Live as well. Do you think that EA Sports can make a comeback with the
No,
basketball game that could rival 2K, or is it too
no,
late?
no. I think it's too late. I mean, you got to think about that. Think about it like this. Um, NBA Live kind of made it because it was the only which NBA Live came from Lakers versus Celtics, and then it came Bulls versus Blazers, and I think it's
Mm-hmm.
Bulls versus Suns, and then it was the NBA Showdown, and then it became NBA Live. So they kind of made NBA Live kind of made it off just having an NBA license. The moment NBA 2K kind of stepped up, it wasn't the best game right away, but it gave you the presentation of a real NBA game.
Mm-hmm.
And once they start getting guys in, like, which before we even get to the NBA 2K, it was a game called NBA Showdown. I think not NBA Showdown, but NBA Inside Drive. That's it.
Yeah,
Mike Lane
that's
was
right.
NBA Inside Drive. NBA Inside Drive was not the best looking game, but it had things about it that resembled real NBA basketball. Like Shaquille O'Neal, it was almost impossible to make free throws with Shaquille O'Neal in that game, which is very, very, very realistic. And I like that aspect of the game. Guys who couldn't dunk didn't dunk. You weren't you like in NBA Live. You can see Steve Nash doing like a double pump tomahawk dunk and getting alley ooped. Like no, Steve Nash doesn't do that. But on Inside Drive, Steve Nash didn't do that. But NBA 2K came in and they got their presentation all down packed and they look very realistic. Then they start bringing in guys like the Czar. They start bringing in people like Scott O.G. Gallagher, and these are guys who actually play basketball and start incorporating real life plays in the game, defensive settings in the game, and NBA 2K became a thinking man's game. And I tell anybody who plays NBA 2K that in order for you to really be real successful in 2K and playing the game, you honestly have to run plays. You have to call timeouts. You have to sub. You have to treat it as if you're playing a real basketball game because they've kind of swayed away from arcadey, and I know as a game is going to have its problems, but they've moved away from arcadey and kind of went more to sim. And a lot of people don't like that because most people today think the NBA is really just shooting threes and crossing people over. So we kind of like distracted by highlights from ESPN and NBA TV, and we think that's all the NBA is. But really, deep down inside, the NBA is really X's and O's.
That's a good take. I love it, and I think that if people play that game too, they will become better at basketball if they learn how to run plays and learn the concept of the game.
Absolutely.
I think that's why a lot of athletes don't make it because they don't have a realistic approach to the game. Some players have made it look easy. That's a great take. So, one last question for you.
Yes, sir.
Two, actually.
Okay.
Who is the best at NBA 2K and the show out of you, myself, and Coach Matt, I'm sorry. Can you rank us for 2K
in
and
2K
and for the show?
In 2K, I will be 1, 2 will be Matt, 3 will be you.
Okay.
And part of the reason why you're 3 is because you make no adjustments. You just play with the same players like the whole game and let the computer do all that for you. Like you don't do none of that. And you get mad. It's like
Are you calling me D'Antoni?
No, I get mad at you sometimes because you could clearly have a mismatch and you never take advantage of it. It's like you no, I'm gonna shoot this 3. But somebody draped all over you. You go to like Michael Jordan or Kobe mode. Now the show, I'm number 1. You will be number 2 because I can tell you something that you do way better than Matt. You're a much better pitcher. Like your pitching is like the computer on like Hall of Fame mode. Like when I play against the computer, you pitch like the computer. You don't give me a whole lot of good stuff to hit. You work the counts. Your defense is good. Your hitting is actually pretty good. Matt's hitting is good, but Matt's pitching is kind of awful. Because
I had to get good at pitching because I couldn't beat y'all. So I was like, I'm gonna do something right. If I can't hit the ball, I'm gonna pitch.
Matt throws too many me pitches, like right down the zone sometimes, a lot, where you can get home runs.
Well, we'll settle that off this podcast. My last question is, who was the podcast member that gave you the worst first impression when you met them?
Me, Matt, and Pete, we hit it off like right away from day one.
Uh-huh.
Like when Pete first came on the Sim Hangout, and Pete knew all the numbers, the contract. I was like, man, I like this guy. And me and Pete just hit it off. And then Matt came on, and then we hit it off. And then I'm like, wow, I was like, they kind of cool. And then I started doing the other podcast with Pete and Matt. Did it with them. I'm like, wow, I was like, these some cool guys. And we just hit it off. And then one day you just kind of came on, and then you were like talking crap to Matt, and you and Matt were like going at it. And I'm like, who is this Negro? I'm like, who is this Negro? Where did he come from? And then I found out that you and Matt were like best friends since like childhood. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's why they act like they're like. And then as time went on, I'm like, oh, they like brothers. And I knew then, I'm like, oh, okay, they like brothers. And then a lot of people would like man, they kind of wild. Like even like D, who plays the game with us sometimes. D was like, man, they talk crazy to each other all the they talk crazy. I'm like, nah, bro, they like brothers. They grew up together, like playing ball together, and grew up in like Houston together. I'm like, so that he's like, oh, okay. So they comfortable with each other. I say, absolutely, yeah, they like brothers, brother. So it came off like you guys were like enemies, but really, you guys are just like real competitive with each other, like brothers, just the way it is. So
that's funny.
That's what that's you kind of gave me a bad first impression when I got to talking to you and we talk, off the air. Me, you and Pete stay up after the podcast would go off and we would talk about movies. And I'm like, dude, like, and this is something that shocked me too. Like, I didn't know that you were heavy into music, like you were, but I didn't know Pete knew about that much R&B. Like seriously, like Pete's a white guy, but in the inside, I'm telling you, Pete's a brother named. Pete is a brother named Petey on the inside. His name is Petey Wilson on the inside because Pete's like a black dude. Like he got some swag.
I'll say this. Like we've always said that Pete isn't invited to the cookout because he beat us there. He's on the hill.
Yes, absolutely. Like Pete got major swag. Like I'm gonna be honest with you. If we had to say like who was probably the player out of all of us, and I know Pete's married. But I think before Pete was married, Pete was probably the pimp.
Yeah. My wife is not going to watch this, so I can say yeah.
I have a real inappropriate joke that I've said off the air that I'm just going to save it. I'm going to save it. I'll say when we go off.
But if I want to add one thing just real quick.
Oh, go ahead.
Like I say, man, like Matt, Matt is like basketball, like genius. I love Matt. I love Pete. Pete's basketball genius. I didn't even know Mike Skills could flow like he could. I didn't know he could rap like that. Like I was taking when I first heard him rap, I'm like, nah, man, this dude's supposed to be making millions. Because the rappers that I hear now, like I have to halfway most of the time, almost 99% of the time, I have to drive home in silence because I can't listen to these new rappers. They trash, bro. They just are. Done. Maybe it's my age. I don't know. Maybe it's my age, and I'm 40. I'm finna be 41. Maybe that has something to do with it. But no, Mike Skills got some talent, man. He's cold. You cold within the music too, man. So I mean, hey, man, it's funny because everybody here is like really talented and everybody's cool, man. Everybody has like a skill, and I like that. And I can talk to you guys about anything and like not be like ashamed, have to hide anything. I pretty much tell you anything that it is, and like I feel comfortable with you guys. Like I don't even call you guys just friends, man. Like I can honestly say, man, you guys are my lifelong brothers.
Wow, likewise, Greg. Like I told Pete, I love you, brother.
Love you too,
appreciate your friendship. Thank you for sharing with us those interesting facts, those always great takes, and yeah, moving right along. Now you got the three Houston boys. So next up, we're gonna talk to the regular host, Mr. Mike Skills himself. What's up?
What's up, man?
Mike,
Good.
Tell us your birthplace, because you share that in common with someone else on the podcast. What's your birthplace?
So my birthplace is Chicago, and I was raised in Houston. So I grew up in Houston from the age of 4, but I was indoctrinated with all the Chicago sports. So Bulls, Bears, Blackhawks, Sox, Cubs, in that order.
Well, Gonzo kind of helped us. He made it easy for me to segue into your portion of this podcast. He talked about something that I don't think all of our listeners know. You actually are a recording artist, a great songwriter, and a host. We made you the host because for 5 years, or was it 6 years, you hosted an underground show in the city of Houston. And you even got a sponsorship for Scion. You put out a compilation mixtape with Scion. A lot of people don't know that. You really got numbers on the board. You got the stats behind you. Numbers don't lie. So tell us, how did you get into rap music?
I got into rap music the same way I got into sports. My older brothers, first of all, I come from a musical household. So my mom had records. She was playing James Brown, Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, all the greats. And I got into like Michael Jackson and Prince. But my brothers, who are 10 and 11 years older than me, they're Gen Xers. They were playing LL Cool J. And I remember walking in the living room, and they were syncing up the record Bad to the video on MTV at the time. And I just remember watching LL Cool J, just thinking to myself, like, I don't know what this is, but that's what I want to do. And it kind of planted a seed that would mature much later in life. But that's really the start, is my brothers playing that and then getting into Run DMC and, NWA and Public Enemy. And, one of my brothers was more into like the soulful side. So we played some Gangstar and later some Tribe Called Quest and some Das Effects. And my other brother was more into the hardcore side. So I got to taste of NWA and like Ice Cube and Mac 10 and, Tupac and stuff like that. And then later, when I started listening to music on my own, like the first 2 records I ever bought, first 2 albums I ever bought, and I'm telling my age on this, so a lot of millennials, older millennials would know this one. There was a company called Columbia House where you could buy 1 or 2 records at full price, which at the time was like $27, and then you got like 8 or 9 free CDs. And so the first 2 albums I bought were Notorious B.I.G. Ready to Die and
Wow, classic.
Warren G Regulators, G-Funk era.
Another classic.
So that kind of started me on my way, and then we moved around a little bit after around those years, and I picked up rapping along the way. I had some friends that used to freestyle, and I wanted to be down, so I started to freestyle a little bit with them, and and I just kept with it, kept writing all through high school, putting out mixtapes, putting out little cassette tapes, and music has been an integral part of my life, and I'm just really glad to have done my 10,000 hours, that now I'm at the point where I'm preparing to release a new album. I'm putting out videos and singles, and in a city where that caters to exactly what I'm supposed to do, where I'm exactly supposed to be. So,
which is, for those that don't know, you now live in
in the city of Los Angeles. I almost said in the city of Compton.
You're not that far from Compton.
No. I'm reside in Los Angeles, Koreatown to be exact. So we just celebrated your birthday party last week, and I'm not gonna say the number because that's a whole different thing. But when it's my birthday, we might have to do some Korean barbecue. So we're gonna get that bulgogi, we're gonna get that brisket, we're gonna throw it on the grill. We're gonna have some fun. So
I'm down for that.
Mm-hmm.
So you and I met in college, and I remember seeing you perform on the patio. You were freestyling, somebody was beatboxing. I don't think I've ever been in a more hip-hop moment than that. It was pretty surreal to see you just freestyle and the crowd going crazy and you dropping these punches. And I thought it was written the whole time, but it wasn't. This goes to show you your talent, your abilities. It goes to show the ability you had at a very young age.
Oh, no, thanks.
Tell us what made you start Mission Control.
Well, so my company...
And explain what it was.
So Mission Control initially was started as a platform because I was doing open mics and I was going to parties and hoping, talking to the DJ like, yo, put a beat on, let me rap, and just going to cyphers, sitting outside of clubs. And it got to the point where I was like, man, I want a show. Like I can write rhymes, I can perform. And the only way to really perform is to get out there on the stage and do it. And I couldn't get any gigs. I couldn't get booked on anything. And it got to the point where the open mics were drying up and DJs was like, nah, man, I got to do my thing. Got to keep the crowd hyped. So I got together with some other MCs I was freestyling with at the time. We started a show, and, it was just, I needed a platform, and created out of nowhere. This is before the internet. This is before, before the internet is where it is now, I should say. This is the MySpace era. So yeah, you can meet people, but performing live is where it's at. So I had to start that platform for myself and others with me. And some guys dropped off and I just kept going with it. And now it's a production company. So now it's my imprint to release my music, to shoot these videos. And it's not limited to just music and videos. Like it's just a media property to create content. So I think all in all, it's been a platform all along, and I call it Mission Control because we're from Houston. I wanted a name to represent that, but also it's like, yo, when there's a rocket launch, they have to contact Mission Control and make sure everything is going accordingly. So I always wanted to be critical of that. I always wanted to be on the forefront of launching careers, including my own, but also of other artists. So that's Mission Control in a nutshell. We blast off.
Well, another thing I want to bring up, and you don't have to go too deep into this. A lot of people don't know that you had an opportunity to sign to a major record company. Do you care to share anything about that, or?
Yeah, I can. I won't go too deep in it, but just simply put, it was a time I had released my first album independently over 2009, and it was making some good noise in Houston, getting a little press, and I was approached to sign with a label and a management deal, and luckily my best friend and his wife are attorneys, and they were actually both in law school at the time, and I had them overlook some things and overlook the contract that I was presented with, and they helped connect me to some more experienced people in the law profession. And they looked at it and they were like, look, this is what you're signing. If you really want to go for this, you can, but just understand what you're giving up and the type of deal that you're signing. And also at that time, I had previously read Donald Passman's book on the music industry. And so I was familiar with like contracts of that nature and how they're really a record deal is just a loan. And that wasn't a good loan that I could sign up for. It was, it was a very incentive leading. I had to hit so many benchmarks and I ended up passing on it. And in retrospect, it's one of the best decisions I made because, a lot of artists have this dream, like, I want to get signed. I want to get signed. Yeah, but you don't want to get ripped off either, without saying choice words. You don't want to get ripped off, and I couldn't sign that deal. And for that reason, I remained independent.
Fantastic. If I can use Matt's favorite word. So you're also, you mentioned being from Chicago, and if you listen to the podcast, we know you're a Bulls fan, and you're also a sneakerhead too. Can you briefly describe your obsession with the Jordan 5? Of all the Jordans, that Jordan 5 colorway, I'll let you talk about it. Well, what is it with that shoe and you?
So the Jordan 5, that was the year that I really got into being a Bulls fan on my own. Kind of like with music, I was seeing my brothers watch the games. And so I'm a little brother trying to follow my brothers around and do what they do. And in the 89-90 season is when I really got into the Bulls as my own. I started recording the games myself. I started waking up early on the weekends to watching. I would record the games and then later in the week, watch them again and study them like I was going to play in the next game almost. And in that season, in the first round against the Milwaukee Bucks, actually, let me backtrack. That was the first time I had a pair of Air Jordans. My mom gave my older brother the money, took us to the mall, and I got the black and metallic Jordan 5s, all black with that metallic and that 3M tongue. So when the playoffs came, the Bulls would wear black shoes in the playoffs, and MJ broke them out, and he put white laces in them to go with the white compression shorts underneath the uniform, and it just cemented it for me. Like, I already loved the shoes because obviously I had them. I had a big foot at the time, so I had the visible air bubble, and I had the ice bottom where a lot of my friends had smaller feet, so they didn't actually have that feature. But when I saw him wearing with the white laces and I saw how deep they went in the playoff wearing them shoes, it just cemented it in my heart. And I'm going to be honest with y'all. When they lost that game 7 to the Pistons, I cried. So Gonzo, you were a Pistons fan at the time, and I know you switched over later. You came over to the good side, but In 1990, when they lost that Game 7, oh, I cried. So that's
Well,
that
you
has a
weren't
lot
the
of
you weren't the
emotion.
only Michael crying. I'm sorry to cut you off. You weren't the only Michael crying, but we
That's for
know
sure.
that story ended well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Mike, thanks for giving us some more insight as to who you are and what your experience is and why we made you the host. Last thing, quick question. Which podcast member gave you the worst first impression, if any?
If any, I'm gonna say nobody gave me the worst impression. I mean, honestly, I met you in real life. So we met at the Performing Arts Center in front of Houston Community College, where at the time I was studying audio production, and I think you were doing like your basics before you got your bachelor. And I later met Matt through you, and then of course I met Peyton Gonzo when we got on the pod together. So honestly, is I have not had any reservations towards anybody. It's just like a natural mesh. Like I can't explain it how the synergy just came right away, and it was like I felt like I'd known you guys from years, and it helped that obviously Matt is friends with Gonzo and Pete, and of course, I figured, yo, if he cool with Matt, he must be cool. So yeah, all good vibes all around.
Well, can't tell you enough. I love you, brother. Thank you for sharing,
Oh, you're welcome.
and I appreciate your friendship. And I love having you as the host of this podcast. And that's enough from our small forward. Now, this last portion, Matt and I have known each other the longest, so we're kind of just gonna interview each other and and tell how we met. And I'll let Matt. You can introduce me, Matt, and vice versa.
hey, man, this is Byron. This is my brother. Radremm is all this, man. We've known each other. He knew who I was our junior year in high school. I didn't know who he was until we had a class together senior year. And we're going to kind of reverse this. He keeps asking the question, who on this pod did you have the worst impression of initially? For me, it was him. As a matter of fact, not only was it I didn't like him, he was a jerk. He was a jerk.
Past
And
tense.
he was, yes. Byron, please, and I want you to tell the story of why I
Well,
thought you were a
so
jerk.
I'll say this.
And you can sing the song, Byron. You can do the song.
All right, let's do this. Okay, because I knew, and I don't want to go too long. So my junior year in high school, a mutual friend of ours, Devon, who was on a basketball team, was always hanging around with Matt. And I'd never seen Matt before, and there weren't a lot of white kids at our school, so he naturally stuck out like a sore thumb. So I would see him all the time. I was like, oh, okay, we got a new white boy goes here. Cool. Then I think Thursday was the day that y'all had game days, right? It was Thursdays, right?
We played Tuesdays and Fridays. And sometimes Saturdays, just depending, but usually Tuesdays and Fridays were game days.
So on game days, all the basketball players wore their basketball shirt. And I had seen Matt with Devon, but on game day, I see he's wearing a basketball shirt. And I'm like, he's on the team. Now, to give you put this in context, if you went to Elsik High School, which is our high school, and you played basketball, you were the envy of every guy in school, and all the girls wanted you because my sophomore year was Rashard Lewis's senior year, and he got drafted out of high school, and it was like Elsik High School was Rashard Lewis mania, right? So everybody wanted to play on the team, but it was very difficult to do. If you were not recruited from a middle school and our district, which is A-Leaf, and you weren't in the basketball class and you didn't work your way up, you were not going to get on the team. And I remember being there. I remember when I was there, I was told that only one person tried out and made the varsity in the past, I don't know how many years. So to see this kid who we didn't know, we obviously knew he was a transfer and he's on the team, there was a lot of hatred that came Matthew's way. So I remember asking Devon, like, yo, is this white boy I didn't know his name. I was like, is this white boy on the team? He's like, yeah. I was like, can he play? He was like, he can play. He's a shooter. And I was like, he was shorter than me. No, actually, you were taller than me at that time.
I not senior year. I wasn't. Okay.
You were taller than me. I wasn't yet 6 feet tall.
Damn.
But I just remember thinking, like, there's no way in hell this guy is
Byron,
better
what
than
you were
me.
thinking is when he told you I could play, you know what? Nah, that's what you were thinking. Be honest.
Yeah, I was
Nah.
like, there's no way in hell this kid, because Matt just looked. I mean, now one thing I can say about him, I remember seeing him, and he always had Jordans on, and I was like, okay, he got a little swagger, he got a little flavor, but he just seemed like extra like white to me, if I can even say that. Like
I was a geek. I was a geek.
He wasn't like
I was a
Pete.
geek.
You know, he wasn't like Pete. Like
you should have been in band rather than on the basketball
yes,
team.
exactly.
Yeah,
like
hey, I had
Pete,
zero swag, none.
If Pete, I feel like this. If Pete comes to my house and my mom serving like some chillings or greens, he gonna know exactly what they are and what to do with them. Matt would be like,
That's
"What
cold.
is this chitterling that's on my plate, and how do I?" You know what I mean? So I was just like, "Who is this guy?" And so fast forward to our senior year, we ended up having a class with each other. But I would always see Matt because I hung out with I was friends with a lot of basketball players, and they would always talk about Matt. Oh, that's Matt. Now by this time, everybody knows him as, you know, Matt Miller. And there were some girls I would hear in my classes that liked him. They had crushes on him. I remember one girl in my class was like, "Oh, I like Matt Miller. Oh, he's so cute. Blah 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 blah. He's on the basketball team. Blah 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 blah." And I was like, "Man, you a bopper." That's what we used to call girls back then. It was like, oh.
Yes.
And I didn't know him, but I just didn't like him. And I think I would chalk some of that up to like just immaturity, you know? And I was 17, but we had a class together. And I remember I was just like always just bagging on him, just always just for no reason, just being a jerk. And at that time, Britney Spears had a song called Hit Me Baby One More Time. So I remember like just making fun of Matt. And he's like, "Hey, man, I'm fixing to hit you." You know?
It was
So
every
like,
day,
the
entire class,
start singing,
every day.
"Hit me, Matty Boy." One time, that's when I started calling him Matty Boy. I called him. The reason why I started calling him Matty Boy was because I was saying that it became with like more of an endearing term or name for him. But at the time, I was saying that to antagonize him. I was like, "What you gonna do, Matty Boy? Oh, you want to fight me, Matty Boy?" Everything was Matty Boy. I just started calling him that. And one of my friends came to me and said, "Hey, Byron, you are a hater." And I was like, "No, I'm not." He's like, "Yeah, you are." And we went back and forth. "No, I'm not, or not, or two." And then he's like, "Yeah, you are." He's like, "Why you don't like Matt?" I was like, "I don't know. He's just dumb." He's like, "No, dude. The reason why you don't like Matt is because he's on the team and you're not, and he can play and he's white and you can't handle it." And when he said that to me, I was just like, "What you trying to say? I'm racist? Like, my granddad is half white. Like, what are you trying to say? Like, I'm not. My mom's dad is black. Like, you know." He's like, "I'm not saying you're racist, but you're definitely prejudiced, you know." And he's like, "You have not given this guy a fair chance at being his friend, and or even trying. You don't have to be his friend, but you haven't even just given him a fair shot. You don't really know him." And then one day we were arguing about basketball, and Matt chimed in, and everything he said was just so factual, and I was like, "Man, dude, you really know your stuff." And he was a Michael Jordan fan, and I later found out that his dad knew Michael Jordan's former coach, which was Doug Collins, and he was from Illinois, and his dad actually worked at our school. He was a coach, and I had seen his dad, but I didn't put the connection together. Then
Well,
I had
that's because he worked. That's because my dad was at the 9th grade center.
Right, but I'd seen him around because before we had the 9th grade center, and they sent all those kids there. And then I had a class with his sister the whole time, and then we started connecting the
Byron,
dots.
Mr. Rossbottom.
Mr. Rosbottom, that man said one day you're gonna move to LA and be famous. Well, I got one part right. We got to get to the fame part, and so long story short, what happened after that?
Like, you just called me once during the summer.
No, we played basketball against each other. He was like, "My dad works at the 9th grade center. We can go there and hoop during lunch break." And so we went there and we played one-on-one. I just wanted to prove that I could beat him. And he had glasses on because something happened with his contacts.
Yeah,
he didn't have
infection. I
shoes
couldn't
on,
wear them.
and I beat him. And he said, "Okay, we'll run it back tomorrow. I'm gonna bring my sneakers," because he had like some like dress shoes, like. And he said, "I'm gonna bring my sneakers and I'll have my contacts and we'll run this back." And we played one-on-one, and he beat me. But when I really, really gave him his respect was, I said, "Matt, you're not gonna make it past. I'm not gonna let you drive in on me. You're gonna have to get all your shots out here." And I backed him all the way up to the half court, and he scored. And we're playing ones and twos, and he gave me like 4 threes from half court, and he beat me. And I think the last two, and I was playing off him. The last two, I got up on him, and I was jumping hand all in his face, and all I remember was turning around and seeing the ball not even touch the rim, just all net. And I was like, holy, this guy can play. And I was just like, wow, like, I've been hating on this guy. He's on the team for a reason. Race
And
has
then we
nothing
went to
do with
Amity.
it.
Like after we had exams, we went to Amity. And
Right. I was like, race has nothing to do with it. Him being a dork has nothing to do with it. This guy can play. And I hate to say it, you didn't owe me anything. You didn't have to earn my respect, but you definitely did that day. And then I was like, okay, so now that I know he can play, I'm gonna start taking him to the gym, to the courts, and I'm gonna have him. I want to pull like the Wesley Snipes and Woody Harrelson, white man can't jump, and I would just bring Matt, and I'd be like, I got him, and then, all right, and then we just would dominate. We would beat people because I knew I could run the pick and roll, I could penetrate, I could dribble, and I could kick it out to him. And that's how we became friends. But I'm gonna kind of go through this quickly because we're
that's the most important. That's the most important part right there.
So we just thought that we would just tell that story. I guess Matthew.
Yeah.
What made you want to go to Elsick High School?
What
made you transfer?
For some context. Well, for some context, my freshman year I went to Clements High School. I went to Cy Falls my sophomore year. Started out at Cy Falls the first 6 weeks my junior year, and I remember watching the Richard senior year. I went to the regional final game when they lost to Pearland to go to state, and I looked at my dad. I said, I want to play in this gym one day. I want to play for a chance to go to the state tournament. And I realized it wasn't happening at Cy Falls, so I told my dad, I'm ready to make the move. And that's how it happened. And we got to play in that gym for a chance to go to state. Unfortunately, we had to play against the number 2 team in the nation, and they beat us by 6.
Well, they also had 3 future NBA players.
Yeah, and a D-League player, which is now the G League. Yeah.
Right. One being their starting point guard was TJ Ford. So that's a fantastic story. I met Matt, who in turn introduced me to Pete, who also introduced me to Gonzo. And this is how Loop City came together. I do want to say one more thing. I want to answer a question that I asked everybody else. The person who, I wouldn't say I had a bad impression, but surprisingly, I thought this person hated my guts. I thought Pete hated my guts because
I'm ready for this.
He didn't understand. I'm a joker, and he did not understand my sense of humor. And so I kept making jokes about this movie called Pete's Dragon. And I kept saying, make it ready. Yeah. Do you remember that?
I remember that. Yeah, but I'm somebody that I'm the most easygoing guy. I don't get offended. And what you dish, I can give back. So it's all good. Well, I never.
Your repayment to me for constantly bringing up that movie in your name. You muted me on the podcast and wouldn't let me back up. So I was like, man, I don't think Pete likes me.
He got him with that czar mute button.
I had to do something.
Yeah.
No, it's all good.
That guy kicked me from a chat before too. But I'll give a brief little bio. I'll give a brief bio on myself. I'm Radremm. I met Mike because we both made music. I'm also a songwriter. I was in a group that became a hip hop band, and I also act. I moved to LA 8 years ago, and
don't forget modeling.
Modeling just came. I don't even like to tell people that because
you like to tell people that because you are not.
Well,
you are not a.
Well, listen,
you are not a shy person when it comes to that.
I got a story for this, Byron.
Well, hold on. Before you go there, Matt. I'll say
he already knows what it is.
How modeling came to me was this: somebody asked me to do it, and I didn't think like. I was like, no, because to be a model, I think you have to be somewhat conceited to even say like, oh, I'm gonna be a model. That's like saying, oh, I'm so good looking. And I never thought I was.
That's never why my story's gonna be perfect.
Honestly, Matt, you can't tell that story today. But
I have to.
Honestly, I did not think that I would model. But somebody asked me to do it, and I started doing it. And then when I started posting the pictures, people were like, "Oh my God, you look great!" And you. But I'll say this: I tip my hat to all the models and the actors, because it is a very high maintenance task to keep that physique, and it is a full-time job because you're like a walking billboard. And I've somewhat struggled with that because I like to eat good food. And when I was very lean, I could model, but in the past few years, no one's really asked me to. So I guess I guess for now,
I got to tell the
for
story. It's
now,
30 seconds.
that's for now. No, for now, that's out. But I was making mine while Matt was pursuing what was it, the
Basketball.
ABA.
Yeah.
When Matt went pro, my music career was also popping off simultaneously. So we always pushed each other to go for it and to pursue our dreams. And I'm very grateful for all the experiences that I've had. And Greg, are you there? Gonzo, you there?
Byron, I
Yes,
can't
I
tell.
am.
Hold on, Byron, I can't tell the
Fantastic.
mirror story.
You're not going to tell that story today. We are Loop City. I love Matt. I love Mike. I love Pete. I love Gonzo. I have a special bond with all of them. We have a special bond with each other. We love basketball. We are here to bring you content, to share our thoughts, our views, our sometimes hot takes on basketball, pop culture, and more. We have so much in store. Please subscribe. Please stay tuned. You'll hear so many funny stories, and we plan on having special guests. We're all thrilled to be doing this again. And with that being said, this is Loop City. I'm today's host, Byron Radremm. Blessings. We're out.